Okay, what I want to, I am showing you the scene where Brett makes her first appearance, and Brett is played by Ava Gardner, who was considered a great, and she is not just considered, she was indeed one of the most beautiful actresses of her time. And then Jake Barnes is played by the great Tyrone Power, who was the superstar of the 40s. We have been talking about the lost generation. Can you mention some of the other significant names from American literature who are? Okay, so Fitzgerald, F. Scott Fitzgerald. Of course, she is the one who coined the term. Gertrude Stein. See, she is at the top, of course. Who else? Yes, you know, Ezra Pound was of course there, and Hemingway was heavily influenced by Pound's elusive technique and also the ability to use the language. So, collectively they belong to the so called, give me another name if you are, because there is one, Hart Crane. Hart Crane. You also should know John Dos Passos. Hart Crane, E. E. Cummings, who always referred to himself in lower caps. Do you know that? Yes, you must have done some of his poems. Now, they are the lost generation. Why? They are the Americans in exile, the expatriates, okay, in self-exile in various parts of Europe, but basically in Paris, especially during the 20s, immediately after the First World War. Now, Gertrude Stein famously told Ernest Hemingway that you are all a lost generation. So, why were they lost? What was the loss they had suffered? Loss of what?
Loss of certainties.
Okay, so the loss was of certainties. The world was no longer the way they had inherited it. So, therefore, you have Kiran Desai's novel famously titled The Inheritance of Loss. The entire the way we view the world, or the way the values we have inherited, the values that have been emphasized upon as, you know, these are the values to be cherished and followed. You can no longer depend on that. You can no longer follow those values. Okay, so these values that have been inherited from the previous generation, they no longer operate in the current world. That is, so therefore the loss. So, and they suffered from anxieties, they suffered from alienation from their own country, because their own country, America, it suddenly started or appeared to them as very provincial. Europe offered liberation. Liberation from what? Old world values. Okay, therefore, in Brett's character, you find she is British. Yeah. So, in her character, you find she is breaking away from every restriction, every taboo that must have haunted a woman of her generation, or the woman belonging to previous generation. So, whatever she has inherited, she just breaks away from that. She lives. So, we are talking about hard drinking, as you have just seen from this clipping. You know, Paris was known for its salons and its cafes and its bustling nightlife. Okay, people would just go, relationships were formed and broken and, left off as and when people pleased. Okay, so these were the values. They were completely alienated from their surroundings, from their culture and their values that they had inherited. Okay, so this is a bunch, hard drinking, fast living. At the same time, are they happy? At the same time, they are hard drinking and fast living the life in the fast lane. Okay, you make relationships, you drink, you have fun, you dance, you drink, you smoke, but are they happy, truly happy? No. Okay, So, again we are talking about disillusionment with their selves, with their surroundings. So, therefore, the lost generation. Okay. So, these were the Americans, so key American figures that are associated with this. And the sun also rises is the seminal text of the lost generation. This also you should remember. So, when you talk about the lost generation, if anyone uses the term the lost generation, you should remember two titles: Hemingway's The Sun Also Rises and Scott Fitzgerald's which novel? Any? Tender is the Night, which depicts his relationship and his days of fast living and hard drinking in Paris during this time, especially in Cannes and Riviera and all those resorts, beach resorts, exotic resorts where rich and famous live. Tender is the Night by F. Scott Fitzgerald, delineating his relationship, troubled relationship, tempestuous relationship with Zelda, his wife, okay, who was also some time writer. Okay, so these are the key figures, these are the, coming back to your question, so why the title? Okay, so I am reading out Ecclesiastes. Okay, Ecclesiastes. So there is a passage I am quoting from there, and Ernest Hemingway uses it in his epilogue. He says, "One generation passeth away and another generation cometh." It's a biblical quote. "But the earth abideth forever." Generations come and go, but the earth remains forever, right? "The sun also riseth." Okay, Gayatri? "The sun also riseth, and the sun goeth down, and hasteth to the place where he arose. The wind goeth towards the south, and turneth about unto the north. In whirleth about continually, and the wind returneth again according to his circuits. All the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. Unto the place from whence the rivers come, thither they return again." What is being talked about? Rukma.
How they have all come away from their home country.
Okay. But the Bible can't be saying talking about the expatriates.
I thought how they.
Yeah, in the biblical context. So the biblical meaning could be the world continues, life continues, things may change, tides may ebb and fall. Okay, sun will go down and sun will rise again. Life goes on. So something terrible has happened, an entire generation has passed away. Entire generation with all its value system has passed. Okay, but the world continues. So therefore, you will find at one place he talks about very matter of fact, in a very matter of fact manner. I went, I changed, I washed, I read the paper, I drank, I went out, I came back, I went to the office. It's like the world goes on in spite of his terrible tragedy or terrible troubles. No, it doesn't matter to anyone. Okay, so you have to take it like a man. That's the idea. All right. Any question, any comment here? So this is what I wanted to talk about the title, chapter 4, and now go down a little bit. There is the letter was a wedding, the other letter was a wedding announcement. Mr. and Mrs. Kirby announced the marriage of their daughter Catherine. I knew neither the girl nor the man she was marrying. I am at that point. Do you find that? All right. Like Zizi the Greek duke and that count. That count, which count? Paulus. Okay, she has just met and he is so agitated. The count was funny. Brett had a title too, Lady Ashley. To hell with Brett. To hell with you, Lady Ashley. Okay, so this is his agitation. Now, if you don't know the context, it appears very strange. Why? But then Hemingway's third style. He is not going to tell you anything, but it's very loaded. Now, why does he resort to using this kind of, you have done Hemingway, so why this language? in what context. Now, I have set the background of this, the whole movement. You have to tell me in what context and why this kind of language. Very masculine prose, right? No flowery, beautifully constructed sentences. So, you are doing poetry, you have done poetry, you have done fiction. So, could you tell me why? What was the context here? What were these people doing with language or with the language?
Sentences generally show agitation.
Okay, but in the context of theoretical context. Confusion, okay.
Modernism.
Good. We are the modernists. These are the modernists. So when you think, the moment you look at Ezra Pound, you have to, Ezra Pound was the fountainhead. Okay, so everything started with him. Hemingway was heavily influenced by Ezra Pound. He also taught Ezra Pound at various colleges, universities in the beginning of his career. And the credo of modernism as given by Ezra Pound was, and this is what he advised the young writers to go out or to get out of the 19th century emotional slither. Use the kind of language to get out of the 19th century emotional slither. So, that all those long pretty flowery sentences full of description, okay, you have to get out of that mood and say a lot in a limited space. So, that is the idea. So, modernists, now when you look at the when you look at E. E. Cummings, when you look at Ezra Pound, I think you have done a little bit of all these poets, and then we look at someone like Hemingway. Together they revolutionized, radicalized the way literature was written. Because this is no longer the language of the yesteryear, of the previous generation.
Didn't get
emotional slither, over-rottedness, over constructedness of 19th century. So, this was the modernist impulse. Okay. And another major influence, of course, Gertrude Stein was their intellectual beacon. Yeah, she was the fountainhead, as was Ezra Pound. T.S. Eliot was writing during the same period. So, you have to contextualize the entire thing. Look at the way The Wasteland is considered to be one of the seminal works. Now, from here I will take you to another point, and same chap, you have to go down a little bit. My head started to work the old grievance. Are you there at the point, Rukma? Well, it was a rotten way to be wounded and flying on a joke front like the Italian. In the Italian hospital, we were going to form a society, and I will skip a few lines. That was when the liaison colonel came to visit me. That was funny. That was about the first funny thing. Is it really funny? Throughout the passage he keeps on referring to his injury and his wound as funny. But they had told him about it. Then he made that wonderful speech. You, a foreigner, an Englishman, any foreigner was an Englishman, actually he is an American, have given more than your life. Now, what does it mean? You have given, your sexuality gone. It's for a man, it is a fate worse than death. Yes. But then you see, interestingly, you may feel that Jake has lost his sexual prowess, but then Robert Cohn, who hasn't, he too is emasculated throughout the novel. Don't you think so? Yes. So, what is it to be a man? That is the question. But when Robert Cohn's girlfriend Frances, she just stands there humiliating him, and there are those beautifully constructed passages, and she humiliates him in paragraphs, not just in lines. Okay, and when she is done with him, he is absolutely demolished, absolutely castrated, okay, or emasculated, with all his pride gone, masculine pride gone. So then where is the difference? What is the difference between him and you have read second part of the novel as well, so you must have come across their trip to Spain, Pamplona, with someone called Bill, yeah, who is a rich American. Okay, he can finance the trips, and there is a nice passage between Bill and Jake, where Bill asks him point blank that I have heard that women support you. That is one group of people talking about you, and the second group says you are impotent. That's the first time you come across this word. Okay, so you are already halfway, or maybe more than halfway through the novel, and then you are the hero is asked point blank, does he deny or does he accept? What does he do?
I think Bill apologizes for being insensitive. And
Yeah.
I don't remember what
I
he
think
says.
Jake responds.
Yeah.
He responds, but how?
Like he doesn't give a categorical answer.
Yes.
He,
So again, a Hemingway's style of writing. So, what a speech! I would like to have it illuminated to hang in the office. Generally, people say that Hemingway has no humor in his way, but don't you find this line quite funny? It's so ironical, and it's not even a speech. It's just like one colonel coming and making those sympathetic sounds that you have given us more than your life. He never laughed. He was putting himself in my place, I guess. Okay, what a terrible fortune. And then Shemala Fortuna, what a bad luck. So at this point, we don't know what is the Shemala Fortuna. It's like such a bad luck, so unfortunate. Okay, but we are not told exactly what is. So it's an oblique reference to his so-called loss of masculinity. Are you with me so far? And the style is, of course, very terse. At the same time, he was also influenced. Any question? Yes, Sona, ask me.
no. I was asking if whether it is mentioned how he lost his sexual powers.
There was an accident.
In the
He got shot in the war.
That's his response to this question. No, I just had an accident.
He just said
Oh yeah.
he had an accident.
Yeah.
He had an accident. He was injured in the war. Okay, so we are talking about the modernists, and then you should also remember another great modernist, James Joyce, who existed during the same period. The war poets like Stephen Spender, and you are also aware of the poet, dramatist, filmmaker Jean Cocteau. You have watched his The Beauty and the Beast. So we are talking about the 20s, the lost generation, particularly referring to the expatriates, the Americans in self-exile, and then who were also under the influence of the modernists. And these are the modernists, these are not Americans, please note that. We are talking about Cocteau, who was a contemporary of another great French painter. Yes, Bunel and Dali, you already know that, but another painter, modernist painter, Picasso. Okay, so we are talking about that period in European history. Okay, so Picasso, Cocteau, Modigliani, you have James Joyce, you have Stephen Spender. So these are the Europeans. We have T.S. Eliot, and then these were the Americans, people belonging to the lost generation. And then think of the contribution they have made to literature and language. Can we go to chapter 12, please? You don't work. One group claims women support you. Another group claims you are impotent. No, I just had an accident. I mean, no, I just had an accident. That's not really responding to whether I am or I'm not. He doesn't. He just never mentioned that. That's the sort of thing that can't be spoken of. That's what you ought to work up. into a mystery, like Henry's bicycle, etc. I was afraid he thought he had hurt me with that crack about being impotent. I wanted to start him again. Okay, so it's like it didn't bother him anymore. Okay, it's not like he's taken aback. He's surprised maybe, but it's not like he wants him to stop. Okay, why don't you go on? Is that kind of a yeah. Okay, so skip a few lines and then you come to Bill's, and then you people have accused Hemingway very often of being racist and having these kinds of anti-Semitic feelings and all. So look at this particular passage. Listen, you are a hell of a good guy and I am fonder of you than anybody on earth. People have read homoerotic meanings also into that, or subtext into that, and why perhaps it could be. I couldn't tell you that in New York. I couldn't tell you that in New York, but I can tell this to you now when we are both alone. It would mean I was a faggot, clear cut. That was what the Civil War was about. Now, where is Civil War? Which was about abolition of slavery, yeah, and equal rights for the black people, and here you are talking more about abolition of slavery. Abraham Lincoln was a faggot. He was in love with General Grant, so was Jefferson Davis. Lincoln just freed the slave on a bet. Okay, if you watch the movie, yeah, perhaps, you know. So yeah, so those are, so all the noble intentions notwithstanding, he wanted Grant. He wanted to do some favor to Grant. The Dred Scott case was framed by the Anti-Saloon League. Sex explains it all. The Colonel's lady and the Judy O'Grady are lesbians under their skin. This is an allusion to Rudyard Kipling's poem The Ladies. Rudyard Kipling, who spent quite an amount of time in India. Okay, he is the one who has written the Jungle Book and also Kim. Yeah. So, Rudyard Kipling's poem, The Ladies, of course, Kipling doesn't use the word lesbians. He says, the Colonel's lady and Judy O'Grady are sisters under their skin, but Bill very mischievously replaces sisters with lesbian. So, homophobia and racism again. So, Hemingway is often accused of being these two, and perhaps you can read into this. When Brett is saying Spain, we will have fun, the 25th. When is that? Saturday. We will have to get ready. I say, Mike, I am going to the barber's. I must bathe. Walk up to the hotel with me, Jake. Be a good chap. We have got the loveliest hotel, Mike said. I think it's a brothel. Are you there? All right. Now, Mike said, and I should know, oh, shut it and go and get your haircut. Mike went out. Brett and I sat on at the bar. Now, this is again very interesting exchange. Nothing is said, but so much is said. Have another? Might. I needed that, Brett said. We walked up the Rue de l'Ambre. I haven't seen you since I have been back, Brett said. Now, this time, last time it was the Count, now it's Mike. She is engaged to be married to Mike. But then in between, she already had a dalliance with Robert Cohn, okay, in San Sebastian. No. How are you, Jake? Fine. Brett looked at me. I say, she said, is Robert Cohn going on this trip? Yes, why? Don't you think it will be a bit rough on him? Why should it? Who did you think I went down to San Sebastian with? Congratulations, I said. Now, what does it mean? He is bitter, but now that you know Hemingway's style, you understand the context. But that otherwise, it's so terse, so simple, yet so elusive. Okay, I went to San Sebastian. Congratulations. He's terribly bitter. Why congratulations? Well, good. One more to your kitty. Yeah, you have added one more conquest. Okay. But through all the while, she is never being judged or condemned. Where was I? We walked along. What did you say that for? I don't know. What would you like me to say? We walked along and turned a corner. He behaved rather well too. He gets a little dull, does he? I rather thought it would be good for him. You might take up social service. You know, if this is your notion of cheering up dull men. Why don't, yeah, this is a nice social service you're doing. Don't you think it's all very ironic? Yeah, and bitter. So he very sarcastic, he is, but it wouldn't show, he is not going to, but because he is so literally impotent now, what helpless, what can he do about it? I rather thought, yeah, you might take up a social service. Don't be nasty, I won't. Didn't you really know? No, I said I didn't think about it. Do you think it will be too rough on him? That's up to him. Tell him you are coming, he can always not come. Okay, if you are so concerned about his feelings that now he is going to see you with Mike, and in between there will be Bill also, and then Romero, of course. Yeah. So if he can't handle all this, tell him not to come, he can always not come. So look at typical Hemingway, short, terse, declarative sentences. It's not going to be too much judgmental, too much of explanation, but it's always, yeah, and loaded. I'll write him and give him a chance to pull out of it. I did not see Brett again until the night of the 24th of June. Did you hear from Cohn? Rather, he's keen about it. My God, I thought it was rather odd myself. Says he can't wait to see me. Does he think you're coming along alone? No, I told him we were all coming down together, Michael and all. He's wonderful, isn't he? They expected their money the next day. We arranged to meet at Pamplona. They would directly go to San Sebastian and take the train from there. Okay, who are they? Mike and Brett. Okay, so they would take a train. They would go come separately. Bill and Jake are supposed to, and Cohn would join them. And when Cohn really joins them, he is so agitated because they are a bit delayed. Brett passes out on the train. She has been drinking too much. Perhaps she, you know, it's all catching up with her. She is unable to face these men as a group anymore. But she has to, okay, because you are talking about that generation, they have to. Yeah, they were the kind of people who, you know, who never had any qualms about accepting consequences or responsibilities. So we are talking about that. Any comments? Now you have been reading the book. Any comments that you would like to make?
Short sentences.
Yes.
That's actually very. I felt it's very interesting to read. And also the time skip was very sudden. It is almost like that conversation continues, but with a time gap of quite some time. They are walking down the avenue, and suddenly in one line it shifts to the day.
So time lapse. Yeah. So time lapse in one, and also when you meet characters and suddenly they appear. Okay, and then they suddenly go away and then they come back. So you have to look, it's not going to be a descriptive explanation. It all happens in one tiny expression. He left and you just lose track of who left, when he left, and then he comes again. So again we are talking about modernism, okay, and so full of allusion. Again look at the reference to W.H. Hudson's Purple Land. Now throughout we are told that Robert Cohn is a rather immature person. Yeah, and he has read The Purple Land, which is about the author's adventures. It's an exotic tale set in exotic lands in South America. And then after reading the book, Robert Cohn wants to travel. Yeah, he starts getting restless in Paris. Paris bores him. By the way, this is a reference that I wanted to give you. Hemingway calls Paris and his life, a movable feast. Are you aware of that? A movable feast. That's also, by the way, the title of his autobiography, his memoir. What am I writing? Moveable. a movable feast.
You describe the Paris life as like nights and like saloons, clubs and nights.
Good.
Yes.
Everything. So
Yeah.
that is what is calling as feast and all. Like,
Yeah. So it's a feast to all your senses. Have you come across a feast for all senses? So you have all kinds of cuisines. You have all, yeah, beauty. You have the streets. You have the wine, the nightlife, the dancing. Okay. You have fashion. Paris is a feast which is always moving. Okay. It's not static. So that's
Also, it's a feast is generally
a treat.
around which a lot of people meet
Exactly.
and interact, which is
So
what's
a feast of people.
Yeah, which is what's happening in Paris now. To all these people are like meeting and communicating around.
Do you remember that point when they are on the train? They are going to Pamplona, and there are other, group of Americans, parents and child. Remember? Okay, and then pilgrim fathers. For Catholic fathers, who they keep on referring to as pilgrim fathers. Okay, so all these Americans, and there is a point where they say there are so many Americans, so many compatriots. Okay, there is a point. I think Bill says it. Too many compatriots here. Okay, to the madam who manages the salon. He says, I don't want to. It's always too crowded. I see too many compatriots here. Okay, so crowds of people, and even in this scene that you have just watched, it's a night time salon, but people are just out there having a good time. Okay, what do they do for a living? We don't know. Yeah, so they are, and mostly writers. This is interesting. Mostly writers, poets, journalists, artists, filmmakers. Oh, you are reminded of that? Have you seen Midnight in Paris? Okay. Don't you think that is a movable feast? Yes.
So that's a very
Even in
big
the movie,
move.
there is a party happening. Scott Fitzgerald and Zelda are very much there, and he gets into a car, and Hemingway gives him a discourse, masculine terse discourse on courage and death. Okay, and then you have Dali, okay, played by Adrian Brody. Okay, Dali. And then Buñuel walks in, and one of my favorite scenes is, Buñuel, you have done Buñuel recently. So a scene in the movie where Owen Wilson's character, okay, he meets the young Buñuel and he says, I have a good idea for a movie. Dinner guests arrive at a mansion and they are unable to leave, and Buñuel says, why? And he says, there is no explanation, but Buñuel said, I don't get it. And then the reference is to which movie? Dinner guests arrive and they are unable to leave. Are you aware of that? Have you done that? Yes?
Forgot the name.
The Exterminating Angel. Okay, so Midnight in Paris is very interesting, and if you connect this movie to Woody Allen's Annie Hall, the opening scene where Martian McLuhan himself in flesh and blood, he arrives, and an annoying man in the background, he is talking about Fellini and culture and whatnot. So suddenly, cultural literacy in Woody Allen's film cinema, that is one area of research. There is so much of allusion, but here you have Buñuel and our hero, and he is giving him an idea that dinner guests come and they are unable to leave. Okay, and this is a good idea for a movie, and Buñuel says, I don't get it. Okay, and then unless and until you have done Buñuel, how many people in the audience can get that allusion, even in America, in today's times? Don't you think so? And then Hemingway, and you have Gertrude Stein, and her biographer, Alice B. Toklas. She is also there in Flesh and Blood. You have Picasso and his mistress. Yes, yes. And there is that so-called pedantic, annoying gentleman. Pedantic gentleman who is his girlfriend's friend, who is a professor at the University of Sorbonne, visiting professor at the university. So he pokes fun at the so-called intellectuals also. But cultural literacy, yes, it's full of that. Yeah, so it's not like you have to be a professor to have that kind of, to have that, those, to get those sense of allusions. Okay. So what else would you want to discuss?
Like we were discussing character study and goals. In that scene where Francis is shouting down.
Yes,
Owen,
please. Yeah.
like before that, Jake is talking to one character, Harvey. And then
Harvey Stone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That character comes
Never
there.
comes back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we are not told who he is. Like,
Yeah.
we are just told Harvey Stone was sitting there and
Starving,
Yeah.
almost starving. So we meet him, we lose him. Yeah, he is referred to. Bill also refers to him at some point, but then he never makes an appearance again. Yeah,
like a journalist.
very journalistic style of
We get an
meeting.
idea that it's a journalist colleague, but
Yeah.
nothing.
But also a journalistic style of writing, talking about referring to people and then people getting lost in the crowd. Yeah,
But at least
and the cow, yeah, maybe Paulus.
Yeah.
Whatever happens to him.
And mom, isn't he American? I mean,
He's a Greek count. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's very exotic, therefore Our Lady likes him. He's also very rich. Yeah, and he's able to take care of her, and perhaps he had a good time with her, but then he also comes and goes and nobody ever makes any reference to him again. So he is also a part of this moveable feast. Okay, so people feasting on each other, yes, that could also be there, but then culturally and literally it was a very dynamic, very vibrant period. That's what we have to understand. Midnight in Paris is also about that. Yeah, that how interesting that particular, in spite of its so-called decadence. Yeah, so they were decadent period, but look at the kind of work they produced. Perhaps because they weren't so judgmental and they were open to new ideas. Okay. But the lost generation that lost whatever it had inherited, but then it had also gained because, yeah, they had done away with all that they had inherited. Okay, so open-minded.
Movie, like, you lose what was there in the previous
Yeah.
generation, and you always yearn for what the
Or-
previous
yeah.
generation.
Yes.
That's what the movie is. On.
There is a character who wants Picasso's mistress. She wants to go back to the Renaissance period, and the detective who follows him, yeah, he is guillotined by Louis the 16th. Remember that? Okay, and we never hear from him ever again because he is referred to whatever happened to the detective, and then suddenly we lost him. We don't know, he just disappeared, and we know he disappeared in those times. Okay, so the magical spirit of those times. All right, we will meet next, and I will be doing chapter 15 till end. Okay, please come having read the work.